once you really want to get started with a growth team, the key thing is having a good focus. What is it that we want to grow, and let's try to make it as specific as possible. So give people a specific target, give them a specific segment of users that they should focus on, give them a specific step within the funnel that you want to really improve. Because if it's just grow team, go grow, then it's like we'll be all over the place, and it's so hard to get that real understanding of what is causing the problem of us not growing.
Redefine Growth podcast. Welcome to the show, Ward van Gasteren. I'm super excited. One of the pioneers in growth hacking. We're going to talk about the thing we love most, besides our kids, I think.
And wife.
And wife, and family.
And family.
Then somewhere in the top still is growth hacking. I'm excited about this episode. Can you tell a little bit about your background? I know you're an expert in this field, but maybe you can tell a bit more about what you've done. You were one of the first Growth Tribe graduates that I know, but in the meanwhile, you've been doing a lot of things. So maybe you can add something to the introduction.
Yeah, indeed. So I started out as an entrepreneur myself. Had a nice business, was cool, and I really felt more of that challenge in the growth, finding a systematic way to grow your business, and that's where growth hacking was just coming up as a new field. So I found it interesting. Heard about Growth Tribe that was just getting started here in the Netherlands. So jumped in it, was accepted, and then that has been now for more than 10 years that I'm in the field of growth. Always worked as a freelancer by myself, and did a lot of executional projects in the beginning, purely setting up ads, tracking, building websites, just making sure that I've seen all of it, and then slowly moving into more the strategy side and the coaching. And nowadays I'm moving a bit back into more execution, but with a strategic eye for the problems. So that's kind of where I'm at today. So I do a lot of executional projects and coaching projects and workshops. And on the side, I've done a lot of things. It's growth has really been, it's my job, but it's also a lot of passion that goes in it. So I have the blog growwithward.com that is going insane still. It's 25,000 visitors every month on the blog, worldwide, ranking for a lot of different keywords. For me, that was never the goal in the beginning. It was just giving a good definition to the field of growth hacking. And over the years, created several courses, wrote a book on growing happy clients. And that's a bit about me.
Amazing. Yeah. So growth hacking, growth marketing, growth strategies. We both love it, I guess. Yeah. Where should we start? Maybe the difference between growth hacking, growth marketing, and more traditional marketing is a good starting point. And then we move on towards more the strategic part and the tactical. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some tactics that we've been applying. But let's start with the differences between growth marketing and traditional marketing.
Yeah. So I think there are two big differences between growth hacking and traditional marketing. So first of all, it's marketing teams don't touch the product. Well, actually, that's the place where most growth happens. Yeah. And second part is growth teams are much more focused on the future and the tomorrow, where the marketing team is more focused on today. So to go a bit deeper on that, I think you have this concept of like the today team and the tomorrow team. I like in an ideal world, marketing does everything, and I think growth can be seen as a subsection of marketing in some ways. But it's simple as you put a ad specialist on your ads, you should put a growth specialist for growth. But in many cases, growth is like one of many priorities for a CEO, one of many priorities for marketing, but it's only you get there when you have time left. but we never have time left. There's in business, everything is moving so fast that growth is always the last thing you focus on.
I also say time and money are the most scarce assets in almost every business. Even if you have some budget, it's still scarce.
Exactly. So it's having this tomorrow team focused on what are going to be our next opportunities for tomorrow. Where is growth going to come from? That is a big focus for growth teams, where marketing teams are almost always just focused on, or should be focused on, really well executing the tactics that are working today, just to hit your targets for today. But then if you want to grow the business, you need a growth team to find new channels, new tactics, new markets that you could go into. And for that, you need a lot of quick experimentation and a broad skill set to be able to test out all those different channels. So those are a bit of the differences between growth hacking and marketing.
Yeah, and I like what you say about the concept of today and tomorrow. I think it also has to do with the mindset that you have. That they're really being obsessed about growth and always optimizing whatever you're doing. Always aim high and optimize for the best. I think that's one of the mindset shift that went from traditional market to more growth marketeers. They're always experimenting, trying new stuff. Failure is okay, but trying new things is something worth mentioning, I guess. And I love the product part because the full funnel focus, you can see that in many examples. For example, HubSpot used to be like an enterprise software product. I believe marketing, they did marketing, generated leads. You were talking to sales, you had to sign these contracts, and they moved way more to product-led growth. And now it's the free software for startups. You can enter for free, but they use the product to grow and increase lifetime value with their clients. So that's nice.
Exactly, but also like over time, like real growth doesn't come from the new users that you get in, but it comes from retaining your existing users, upselling them. And like it's so hard if you're marketing and you are outside of the product, you are outside of where the work actually happens. Adding value and keeping people inside that product that is not you as a marketing team, that is so hard. You should be able to improve the product so that the product can give more value, can upsell itself. That's where logical growth should come from.
Yeah, I love it. And so these are the differences. Let's go into what it is in our head, right? So I think there are quite some different opinions and thoughts around it. So what is it actually, the growth? Is it growth hacking, growth marketing? Or you see it as two different things, or potato, potato?
Potato. I think growth hacking and growth marketing are basically the same. It's more about your context and where, in what kind of company you are of, or what kind of people you're with, if you can use the word hacking. But the same goes for the word marketing, because if you say it like that, then getting into the product is very hard. And it's like you're positioning yourself incorrectly. So that's why I ideally just go for growth. I'm also fine with growth hacking.
Do you like this episode? Please like and subscribe, because there's more exciting stuff to come. Sometimes people think that there are shortcuts in growing your business. And like this morning, you were avoiding an accident by getting off the highway, which was quite a nice shortcut. But I don't believe in business that's really possible. Is that the difference also we should take into account, or is it because I don't think there are really shortcuts? Do you?
I think there are a lot of shortcuts, especially when I look at a lot of startups. They have so many things that they are just not doing. So just working from existing templates, working from a lot of the best practices, just starting there and not trying to reinvent the whole wheel will bring you very far. But then at the same time, you should start to understand and build the knowledge about your audience and your product and your market, of which best practices are hurting us, because there will be some that don't work. But it's so there are a lot of shortcuts. Like I come in at different companies and they just don't have any. If you're an app and you don't have push notifications set up, that's just very low hanging fruit, or if you
That's how I
are
will call it. Yeah, low hanging fruit. Yeah.
if you're not personalizing any part of your of the customer experience, like not even having different sign up flows or different emails for different kind of people, that's a big win. That's a shortcut that can bring you very far. So
Yeah, or like a basic thing you should always do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I know you've been talking about feedback loops, and I think that's also some of the things that a lot of companies lack, and they should
Yeah.
be better aware of the experience of their clients. Yeah. So if we go into the definition of growth hacking, growth marketing, growth, how you call it, how would you define it?
growth is a field that is the first field where it's dedicated to growing the business, so that it's not a sub priority for for other pieces of the business, but it's just focused on growth. And having that focus brought in a lot of frameworks, a lot of new skill sets, new ways of thinking that are way more effective to get growth versus how we traditionally thought about it.
Mm.
So it's a quickly experimenting so that you can learn what works and what doesn't. But that's like the key there is the learning part, because it's a lot of companies are, or a lot of growth hackers, and especially the hackers, they are very much focused on just the tactics, and that's not sustainable for long-term growth.
Yeah, I also think often I talk about a systematic methodology to grow a business, and especially we're called sprints and sneakers. Well, if you look at the sprints, it's a process to learn and experiment and so. But we shouldn't forget about the mindset part and the strategic part, because like you're saying, the systematic testing and experimenting, that's more like a tactical operational thingy. But there's also, I think, more like a higher business level focus on growth and having that strategy in place to actually be capable of growing. Because once you're running experiments, there's, I think, a process before it, which cannot be forgot. So maybe that's a nice bridge to the process of growth hacking. So it's where do we start?
With growth hacking in general.
Yeah.
Starting with growth hacking, it's always about having the well, there's like a start before the start, so that's
And then there's something before that.
even before that. Well, there is even an interesting part before the start where it's like growth ideally should be built into the company from the start, like building growth into a product.
Yeah.
That's like how you the way that you structure your product and the thing that you deliver. But that's like way before you want to hire growth hackers. This is more like for startup founders of how you want to set up a business that is ready for growth.
Is that after or before product market fit?
Oh, that is well, product market fit is more like is the company viable? Do we have any reason to exist?
Yeah.
Because then are you solving a problem that actually exists, and is your solution actually solving that problem?
Yeah.
And if so, then yes, people are probably willing to pay for it. But like having actual growth come from a product, like I was working with an app, and they had it was you could do a lot of training exercises, and it was just they had this idea: we want to help people to get better at this thing, and it was just structured as lessons, and you would get a lesson every day. And that was it. That was just the app. So it does solve a problem because people wanted to get better at this thing. I can't tell too much about it, but people wanted to get better about it. So yes, people are willing to download it. But this was just a single player product. It's just you do those exercises on your pace. But like having growth built into the product means that solving the problem will bring more growth. And solving this problem means if you can solve it together with other people, if you are solving that problem at the same time as other people. So we would build in, we were testing with chat functionalities or having group training instead of you on your own. So it's just a simple difference of you download the app and you get into the exercises, or you get into the app. Congratulations, you are part of this little group of 6 people. Everyone briefly introduce yourself, and now everyone does their exercises once a week. The app will check in with the group, like how is everyone doing, and everyone will share an update. This just instantly keeps retention way higher.
Yeah, so social pressure.
And yeah, exactly. But it's like if you already have your full app built as Duolingo, and then you decide, oh, we want to change this to having it as group exercises, that is super difficult. So that's why I'm saying, like, you ideally build growth into the product ahead of time, because those are the kind of things that really, it doesn't really influence your business model, but it does influence the whole technical setup of the whole app, probably, or
it forces you to think about scalability, right? So and hopefully the entrepreneur has a big ambition, and to be capable to get there without ignoring doing the small things in the beginning, I believe. But that's it's a great example. So the part before growth. So you're talking about early stage right now.
Yeah.
Already have that mindset in place very early. Think about it when you're developing the product. And what then?
So once you really want to get started with a growth team, the key thing is having a good focus. What is it that we want to grow, and let's try to make it as specific as possible. So give people a specific target, give them a specific segment of users that they should focus on, give them a specific step within the funnel that you want to really improve. Because if it's just grow team, go grow, then it's like we'll be all over the place, and it's so hard to get that real understanding of what is causing the problem of us not growing. So this is like if you give a good focus, it will double your impact for sure. And that's something that a growth team or a growth consultant or a growth agency can also help you with, is defining like what is a good focus and how specific should we go. Yeah. And that's key, because once you have a very specific problem, let's say we want to improve the conversion rate on your agency website. There we can do a brainstorm. We can come up with 100 different ideas of how we could improve it. And it's like, but we're shooting in the dark. We don't know exactly, even though this sounds very specific, but it's just understanding the cause behind the problem, or maybe like what is the segment that we want to focus on. So if corporates want to hire us, so we want to improve the conversion rate on our agency website for corporates, because we see that they don't trust us because they don't see any other examples of how we work. Okay, great. Now we have a very specific problem, very specific cause. Now you do a brainstorm. Okay, now we have very specific ways how we can solve the cause behind the problem. Yeah. So so having that focus will really make a huge difference.
Yeah, what I hear about what you're saying is also the step before it is deciding that you want more corporates. Right, so there's in your strategy, I think that's why we try to combine more other methodologies like the scaling up with the OKRs, and right there are some ingredients that you can grab from other methodologies to have that very long-term vision and bring that back towards a 10, 3, 1 year plan, even quarterly goals, and then organize your team with the right culture, but also the right systems to log your, and I know you have a really good system for it, log your activities, which is and then at some point, in your strategy, you defined your ideal customer profile, which could be corporates. And then you also know that that's the type of company you're focused on. And that's why you're improving the website conversion for specifically that audience, which is, I believe, a very important part, which might be forgotten sometimes. But a great example, what I see is recruiters, for example, recruitment marketeers. What they do is they push a vacancy, but they forget totally about the employer brand or the reason to work there or who's there. Often they don't have really the right targeting. They just come up with a vacancy. And so these steps before are really important to do the right thing within your experiments. And you're talking about a niche of a niche of a niche in your improvements that you're trying to make, which is
but it's also, as a growth team, as a growth hacker, you can narrow the focus down even further, because it's also when you say we want to improve conversion rate for corporates, by starting to do research, you will find like, especially in France, we are having a very low conversion rate because we don't have this certificate, or because we don't talk about this one big player that is in the market, or we don't talk about Xing in Germany. I know Xing is no longer a thing, but it was always the obvious like the differences. And so it's like understanding, like dissecting a bit of the data and finding specific problems that are also easier to fix, and they are easier and they often have a higher impact. So that's having a narrow focus really helps.
And how do you prevent beforehand? Because if you go down in towards like these small niche things to improve, how do you know beforehand if the impact is going to be big enough to do that investment in that specific part?
That's indeed something you should do together with your stakeholders or with the founder or whoever is funding the project. Is you need to check in together on those goals. Like, also, that's why also setting the targets, like where do we want to improve it to? That can also be a nice moment to look each other in the eyes and say like, hey, I think we can raise it this much. And then the funder can say like, okay, I would be happy with that or not. So I always try to get a clear number, like how many extra app downloads do you want to get? And it's like, oh, we want to get 1,000 extra per city by the end of the year. And it's like, okay, that's good, because I was thinking in like maybe in 100, or maybe I was thinking in 10,000s, but then at least we have a good understanding also of like, where do we want to get? And then, okay, great, I think that is achievable. And the funder can say, okay, great, I think that is valuable to work on.
I remember one of our clients, they got a goal from the investors in app installs.
Always nice.
Oh, and I said like, okay, so I can call a click farm in Vietnam and get these installs in, you know. If that's really the goal, like you were talking about retention, I believe that's it's an undervalued new business, more app installs, and it's crazy that people don't understand that the real value is in the back of the funnel. And hopefully we can help them a little bit to inspire them to focus more on the value that you're actually driving, rather than getting people to click and install the app, sometimes even without knowing.
It's a matter of time. I think the whole field of growth is maturing. Here in the Netherlands, it's going a bit faster than in some other countries. Like in Germany, growth hacking is almost just getting started. But it's like you see that the field is maturing, so we get better processes again. We get less of the hacky stuff, and we will get more product and bottom of the funnel
structured process
growth in there.
So imagine I'm a mid-sized company. I have some big ambitions, and I wanna start with growth hacking. I didn't design my product for growth, but I really want to do it, and I believe that we can. So what are we gonna do?
You go to growwithward.com and and you hire me. No, it's if you are serious about growth, I think even starting with growth on a small scale can be easy to do, because if you set a focus, you put one person or two people, you just pull them aside for even 2 days a week and just give them some dedicated time to work on growth. That can already be a great place to start. If you want to go big, if you got an investment, then find yourself that leader for growth, that one person that can be within your company or from outside, and that person can be the front runner to push the growth within the company. And then this person can help to set that focus. What is a good focus? Where do we want to get started? Which people do we need to get there? and do we have those people internally? Can I do some analyses internally? That kind of stuff. So finding that front runner who can push growth. I've done this a few times as an interim, coming in, setting up the structure, the process, the team, and then waving goodbye again, and knowing that it's in good hands. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I see as well is what we tend to do is get that mindset a little bit up and running. So get them focused on growth. Like you're saying, marketing is a bit different than growth. You have to have people focused on growth. And the good thing about it is that people get really excited about it, right? So it's okay to fail. Okay, that's not always the case in some cultures. We can do new stuff. Okay, that's also nice. We have to think about, okay, you want to grow. So what does growth mean? Like you were saying, is it 100, 1,000, a million, right? So and we're together. We're gonna focus on it, and then you could see that people are get excited about it. So that would be for us a first step, and then you define, okay, you want to grow. What does it mean? And I think the step after that is looking at your funnel, having the infrastructure and the data in place. To see where growth can come from. You were talking about these shortcuts, low-hanging fruit, which is obviously especially when you come from the outside, you have the experience that you have. It's easy to recognize the things that you can do better. What would you do if you see like a top funnel, mid funnel, you see a low-hanging fruit everywhere? What would you do? How do you define where to focus on?
That's where I come in very often. So a lot of the executional projects as well that I do are real breakthrough kind of projects. Like we want to break through into a new market, or with an existing product into a new market, or a new product within the same market. So then I just get hired to either set up the whole funnel from A to Z. So there is nothing. Then there is a lot to do. And or sometimes they're like I'm currently working with a client, they have B2B somewhat running. They are mainly a B2C product. They have B2B somewhat running, but they really want to scale it up. And there was a lot of low-hanging fruit there. So creating one good backlog of all the different ideas, prioritizing them. There you have the pie and the ice scores, but those are more. It's potato. Doesn't really matter to me which one you use.
You also got brass, I think, for
you got brass, you got rice.
Brass has
you
the
got
scalability part in it.
EXL. There are multiple, and it always comes down to which one will have the highest impact if it works. How sure are we that it works, and then how much effort will it take us to set this up?
Exactly.
So if you just create a long backlog of all the different ideas, you rank them based on that, and then you outline each and every or your top experiments. And you just get started on them, trying to set them up in a small matter, just trying to get them out there. And it shouldn't take you more than 1 or 2 business days to set up an experiment. Like if you're taking more time than that, you're
making it too big.
You're making it too big, or you're just being a perfectionist. Yeah. So it's setting up all those different things, and then keeping an eye on whether it works or not. And then once things really work, you study it, and then it's about the Today team that gets a chance to scale it up to, like, hey, we see that webinars are working amazingly. Okay, great. You guys, you can go run more webinars. It's we can maybe test a bit more with what kind of webinars work best, or a bit of the best ways to get more signups. But here's a playbook for the webinars. Let's further develop it together, or you guys just scale it up.
Yeah, we make a difference between experiments and activities. So the experiments are the tomorrow things. Activities are the things that have been proven to work well. And we optimize, automate, and do it on a regular basis as part of the growth strategy. Yeah. And one of the things that we also do is to define where to focus on is if you build that growth model with your full funnel. So you have your traffic, your conversion, your retention. And so, for example, if your conversion is 1% and the benchmark is 2%, or you got 10% in from email, 10% of the revenue coming from email, but benchmark is 20%. And obviously you also have that experience what you see at different clients. Then you can build a model and estimate also the opportunity. So from 1 to 2% is 100% growth opportunity that you have there. From email, it could be a 50% growth opportunities, but you can per funnel phase do an estimate on the growth opportunity. And then you also have to think about, okay, how hard is it for us to optimize that little part, and then you're talking about also the ranking part. So are we going to focus on conversion first? Because the most common thing to do is increase traffic and focus on more acquisition, spend more money, which is the easy way to go. And I believe there's a lot to win in back of funnel, not only with emails, but also some other.
Definitely. No, I always set then a few benchmarks for the whole funnel.
Yeah.
And then start to optimize the funnel from the top, indeed, because you can try improve conversion, but if there's no traffic, then that doesn't matter, obviously. So it's if we get more traffic in, okay, nice. Now we have sustainable traffic flows. Okay, now let's improve the conversion. Okay, that is also going well. Now let's improve the lead quality, and then okay, that's great. Let's also let's focus there next. And that's like the systematic going from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel in priorities of what you optimize.
Yeah. So you have your long-term vision. You have your strategy in place. You know what's your ideal customer, and you know your unique buying reasons for your customer. You have that strategy in place. You have that focus. You have the experiment you thought of. You rank them. And have you been running some experiments? And what then?
I think that's like the one of the bigger mistakes that people are making, and it isn't really mistakes within growth as much as you're just stuck to the old way of growth hacking. I think the old way of growth hacking is more the hacky growth hackers, where we have all these one-off tactics and it's going very fast. But the field is maturing. We all see that the hacky tactics don't work. That's not sustainable. But like going into a more sustainable place, you want to get more systematic about it, run those experiments. But it's not the tactics in the long run. It's not the tactics that will bring the real growth. It's the insights, the learnings, the understanding of your customer and your product and the context that you're operating in. That is what brings the real growth over time. Because if you really understand your customer, that means that when you want to switch to a different audience or expand into a new audience, you know which first principles about your business you can let loose and experiment with. But that's only if you really understand what your product does, what is the context and your audience. And if you really understand all of that, that is where it gets really interesting, because you can, okay, we know that people really like this thing. So, okay, great, let's do more of this in ads, in emails, in a website. But if you just have this tactic, you run this experiment, it works, let's implement it. If that's all you do, then it's very flat. And that also is where, taking another side step, you have all this win or fail or flat kind of talking about experiments, but it's that's because if a tactic doesn't work, then we say this has failed.
Why didn't it work?
But why didn't it work? Because apparently if you do an A/B test and B was the loser, it also means that A was the winner. So if you just look at it the other way around, you say, okay, nice, A is the winner, so let's do more of A. Why was A better? What is it from A that we want to do more of? Opposed to B. And that's where you can start to stack that knowledge, while the tactics don't stack. That's just, we send out this different subject line in an email and it had a better open rate or better conversion rate. But that on its own, you can't really replicate. But it's like, oh, we now understand that if we talk about this certain pain point that is urgent and relevant in this time, let's do more of that in other places as well. So it's trying to get a better understanding of why is an experiment working and implementing that in multiple places, that is like a multiplier to every experiment.
Yeah.
While normally you have one successful experiment and that's it. But in the end, you can add a multiplier to it with, okay, nice, how can we scale this by implementing the why behind the experiment in multiple places? So that is other departments that can use it, other channels that can use it, etc.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and also believe that very often there's not enough time taken to really do a deep dive and analyze. Jeroen was here in the podcast, our e-commerce lead, and he was also saying like even e-com shops, which are typically like pushing products or like they shouldn't, but often they are. They should call their clients. They should call them, understand them in a better way, and get that insights in. And in the process, you should reserve enough time to really understand why this experiment was a success. That's why I also think of, for example, Spotify. I used to read an article where the number of experiments that they were running was an indicator of the efficiency of the growth teams, which I believe is a shitty. Sorry for my language. Is not the right metric to look at, because it invites you to do a lot of small experiments, and it's not about, I think, the number. It's more about the quality, especially the learnings that you're talking about. So that's.
I think this is a nice way where you can see. I think the experimentation industry is a lot further ahead
Maturing.
of indeed mature from where growth hacking, growth marketing is. I think if you look at Spiro is a great agency as well. They also making nice steps on this. But I think as a growth hacking field, we want to move from experiment velocity to learning velocity. And it's not so much of like how many ideas did we brainstorm, how many were we able to execute, and how many did we finish in time. But it's more like the learning velocity is like how many different insights are we collecting at the same time, and that leads to a lot of new ideas based on fundamental insights. Then how many are we able to execute, and then in the end the question is how many new learnings that we get out of this. So I have this Spark framework for like 5 types of insights that you want to get out of an experiment at the end. So that is just like 5 different types of insights that really help. So first one is on the S of surprises, is what were all the surprises that we saw during this experiment? Was it comments or things that didn't go as planned? And those are the surprises. Then we have the P of proposition. So this is like, what did we learn about our proposition and what we are presenting to people? What did we learn from this experiment, and how can we improve our proposition on different places? Then we have the A of audience. So what did we learn about our audience with this experiment? And that can be things people liked, channels they are active in or not. Then with Spark, then you have the R of Spark, which is more the routine, which is more the learnings about our process as a growth team, and because it's that experiment velocity is still a thing. So how many experiments are we able to execute? So if you can find ways to optimize your routine, that is really helpful.
Is it like a retrospective on the process?
It's like having indeed a kind of a retrospective, but then indeed on an experiment level. So because if you're one time running an SEO experiment and then you run an email experiment and a website optimization experiment, there are different routines that you go through, different people that are involved, different tools that you're using. So finding ways, how can we quickly do website optimizations? Okay, we had to wait for this developer for a very long time. Nice. Let's see how can we do this faster the next time. And then you have the C of the Spark, and that is changes. So that is what are we actually going to do with all of these insights. So it's not per se the 5 types of insights that you get out of it, but more like a 5-step framework for doing the analysis of the experiment and seeing all the learnings that you got out of it.
And on what basis do you use these learnings to improve your strategy and your growth?
Oh, that's every experiment. So if you run 3 experiments a week, this is just but this is like 5 questions that you can do with a group in 30 to 60 minutes. So that's part of like the you just said as well, like there's almost never enough time to do proper analysis and get new actions out of it, but it's also like having that conversation together and together understanding like, hey, what are we feeling from this experiment? What is and isn't working? What are we hearing from different places, from different customers? All of those, just having that conversation that sparks the knowledge within the group as well. And if you book a session for it, you can start to document that kind of knowledge that you build, all those new learnings. But if you don't have that conversation at a set moment, you will have that conversation over lunch or during a walk, and then you don't write it down, and then it just gets stuck in your head, which is nice because that still builds knowledge over time.
Yeah.
But then when that head of growth leaves, then
It's gone.
that knowledge is gone, and then you stop stacking the knowledge, and you will start running experiments that you've run before, or start running tactics that go against knowledge that you've gotten previously. So that's then there is a lot of waste, and that's what holds back great growth teams.
Yeah, what I like about what you're saying is just also grab like a fixed moment where you really use that information, that learnings that you got to adjust your strategy. Because well, in your strategy, you thought of decisions that you're making decisions that you think you have to make to come from A to B, and then you have to validate whether or not these decisions were right. So and then you learn in the meanwhile. But adjusting that strategy on a weekly basis is not an advice I would give anyone.
Yeah.
But once you got that learning, you're talking about more and more. Oh, we see that over there, and we see it over there. Then it should be something you include in your strategy, and you change the strategy to perform better.
Exactly, and I think very often we also said like I'm starting to feel over the past few years that even core values for companies or core beliefs or first principles, it's totally okay to let go of some and just be moving on. Like, hey, we see that because the market is also constantly changing. So as a company, you should also be changing. So I think it's super brave as a company, you say, okay, in recruitment marketing and in terms of employer branding, what worked well last year is not really working anymore right now. So let's adjust that. Let's think about it differently. And yeah, that's a hard conversation that a lot of people are not actively having. So
yeah, and it also goes with we did it like in a little bit of an experimental way. So we thought of our new core values with the whole team, and then we came up with them, and then so okay, we're gonna test them for the next half year. We every core value got an ambassador, which is responsible for having that core value really lived by, and but then every quarter we evaluate whether or not these core values actually fit us, because you can think of it, but then you actually have to see whether or not these are the core values that we're living, or we should get rid of some, because if you don't feel them, just get rid of them. And I think that's the same for running these experiments and having that in your strategy. So if it's not working, then don't do it, and do the things that work really well.
Exactly, but that's like company values. We write those down. That makes sense. But like learnings or things we know about the company or the product or the audience, we don't write those down, and then it can't be challenged, and then we can't. But it's like if it's written down, everyone can work with it. It's great for new employees as well. But it's like just write them down, and then you can challenge them as well. That's
yeah. And personally, I love it when it's you got a one-page strategic plan, or you got your vision tracker where you define your strategy, and there are some assumptions in there or like decisions that you're making, and then in the meanwhile you learn and you have to evaluate that. The thing I like about the document, because it's very clear, it's often one page, it's easy to read, and because in the past we've been making so many documents at Sprints and Sneakers, and the key is to get these documents in your process and these learnings into your strategies, because well, you can make a whole bunch of strategic or standard operating procedures and whatever, but if nobody's using it, nobody's looking at the learnings, and you don't have a fixed moment to talk about it and to include any strategy, then it's a waste of the time, which is sorry, but all right, this is cool. So what is the one thing you would recommend people to do when they should start growth hacking besides going to your website?
When you're just getting started with growth hacking, you mean as an individual or as a company?
I would say company, yeah.
Yeah. I think as a company, if you have that one focus, give people the dedicated time to work on it, and then judge them based on output and not on results. I think that is a nice recipe for success in growth teams, especially like because the dedicated time is a big problem with especially if you do growth hacking with a marketing team, for example. There's always something more urgent than that experiment for a potential new channel. It's always like the next newsletter needs to go out, or the next webinar needs to be recorded, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So having that dedicated time, and that can even be every Tuesday and Thursday are growth days with your growth team. So those are 2 people. Those 2 days we work on growth and nothing else. And if your boss can tell you to do that helps you so much. And then the judging on outputs instead of on results is also it's you will be testing a lot of different things. You will be testing it on a small scale, so results will either be negative or might be small. So it's just judge them on output, and also push on try to run as many experiments and test as many things as possible, because that's where we can get more learnings. But it's like if you guys sit still and are afraid of having a negative result, or want to do it perfectly, that's where you're losing money. So that's where companies need to push growth teams on a bit.
Nice. And I love the idea about, and I totally agree with, for example, if you want to start with it, go with the team, go outside of your business and think about your growth ambition, and start with the clean sheet. So a question I often ask, like, what if you could start over right now? What would you do? Because there's often so many legacy. They're focused on the activities, the webinars they need to organize. So get out of the business, spend a whole day or maybe 2, starting with that growth ambition that you have with the clean sheet, and go think of stuff that you can improve rather than doing just your daily stuff, because it gets you in a different mindset and might bring you some shortcuts and other things that you can do, and in that growth mindset. So that's an advice I would definitely recommend people to do. Yeah, this was really nice.
Yeah, right.
You have something the last thing you want to share with the listeners? Some amazing thing you've been doing, which you're really proud of?
Well, we spoke about before about the importance of data in growth hacking.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting to share, because I see that the data is getting way less important nowadays. I mean, it's still like a first principle within growth hacking. It's data-driven way of working, but with everything that is happening with iOS privacy, and that same thing is coming to Google soon.
July, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Google Sandbox. You have ad blockers. It's getting so much more difficult to get accurate data, and then we also have all the acquisition channels that are slightly lying about, like, oh, Facebook says no, all the leads came from us, and Google says the same. And then, like, having good data, that is such a nightmare, and it's such a huge time sucker for a lot of growth teams. It's like you can also be challenged too often on it, because it's basically impossible to get it right. I've seen Google Analytics or tools like AppsFlyer adjust that. They say we have predictive models, which is basically saying we are only seeing 60% of your users. We know that there are more people, but we can't track them. So we do predictive analytics. And then they tell you, like, oh no, this is the whole audience, but it isn't. It's just those that they see, and they stretch it to the 100%. So I see that the data is getting way less important, and that it's going way more to having more of that qualitative data. So the hard data are the real numbers, but the qualitative soft data, that is where the real magic is. Because that's also where, as we spoke about in the beginning of this conversation, is understanding the cause behind the problem. Like the hard data can tell you where you are losing customers, but it can't tell you why you are losing customers. So you need to get that better understanding of customers, have heat maps, have surveys, have just a bit of listening in communities, interviews or calls with people. All of those things that give you the soft data that you need to really lift it to a next level. And yeah, that's where I see soft data becoming the biggest thing. But it's more of a time sucker. So I see that's also, if you don't prioritize those learnings over tactics, then you also can't prioritize the feedback over the hard data. So that's there needs to be coming a certain shift, and I think that is only possible within companies that go for more long-term sustainable growth.
Yeah.
Then you can work on this. But if you're not focused on long-term sustainable growth, then you won't be doing customer interviews, you won't be diving deeper, you won't be doing the learning sessions, that kind of stuff.
I often give the example of if you look at the data, you could say that someone spent 4 minutes and 20 seconds on your website, for example, where you couldn't see that the person was going to the toilet in the meanwhile, right?
Exactly,
So
yeah.
they were just hanging at some picture, and you might think that they love the picture, but in the meanwhile they were just visiting the toilet. So yeah, I love what you're saying, and I believe that you don't think it's becoming less important, but it's shifting. So the importance goes more to different data, because it's so hard to get the data we used to have to get that data right.
Yeah.
So you have always been a believer of the qualitative data and talking to your clients and getting real insights on how to improve the value you offer as a business. And I totally agree from that point.
Yeah, indeed. No, and I've seen it for many years, because it's also with over the years it's really hard to well document all the knowledge within a company. And it often goes into presentations and meetings and slide decks, and we share that. I think Loom is amazing for sharing knowledge internally. But it's been a nightmare, and there's like I feel bad for the people who still have to keep track of all of that in Excel and in Airtable, etc. That's a nightmare.
So what would you place to close? Or what would you place to store the knowledge and the learnings?
So as I mentioned, I've had this frustration for I think now 7 years or something, about also just like documenting the whole process and documenting all the knowledge. But there's never been like Excel is great up to 20 experiments, and then it gets messy or people delete something. So I've been frustrated about it for 7 years. For the past 2 years, I've been building this tool, and it's now live. It's called Upgrow, and we're soon rebranding to Perpedo, as a place to keep track of that perpetual process of running experiments, collecting all the insights that you see within your ecosystem. So just getting all the Hotjar insights instantly, getting all the survey responses in there instantly, having one backlog of all your ideas, prioritize them, work on them, and then one place to store all those learnings as well. But it's a big project. I don't expect it to become a huge company, but I know that it's an ideal tool for grow teams who want to take it to a next level with a more systematic approach. But it's indeed, you need to be convinced as well that like we need to get into sustainable growth before a tool like this is interesting. And up till then, Notion and Airtable will be fine. But if you really want to get sustainable long-term growth, then I think you need a tool like this. And I haven't found any other ones that are focused on storing the knowledge as well. So I've been building it, marketing it, rolling it out, testing it over the past year. That's going really nice.
So for the listeners that are interested, Google Upgrow, and you'll probably still find it. And I think it's so important to store this knowledge, because there will be new people in the team, the similar ideas come up, and you don't want to work in circles. So it's really important to get that knowledge and make a decision based on these insights and knowledge, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do in your strategy, because else it's a waste of these learnings. And it's amazing that you created a place where these learnings can be stored. So thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
This was amazing. To all the listeners, check out Ward's homepage. If you Google for growth hacking, you'll probably find him somewhere at the top. If you're looking for some help with your growth team, he might be available sometimes, but probably not in the upcoming months. So, but feel free to contact him. I'll drop his link to your LinkedIn, your website in the comments. Yeah. And thanks again for being here.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure. It was a nice conversation, and indeed, always happy to help. So for anyone, just reach out to me on LinkedIn for any questions or send me an email. I'm always happy to help, even if it's just a quick call or a quick message. Happy to help.
Cool. Thanks. I hope you liked this episode of Redefine Growth. Thanks to Ward van Gasteren. We've been talking about growth strategies, the process that you should have in place to really be capable to grow, and the mistakes that are often made. Stay tuned for more. Got some amazing guests lined up. Bye-bye.